All right, today we are diving deep into one of the most imaginative genres out there, science fiction. We're going to look right past the usual spaceships and laser beams to figure out what really makes it tick. What gives it its incredible power? Let's get into it.
So when you hear science fiction, these are probably the first things that pop into your head, right? They're the classics, the visual shorthand for the whole genre. But what if all of that is just a wrapping paper for a much deeper, way more important idea? Because really, at its heart, that is exactly what great science fiction is. It's a kind of laboratory for thought experiments, a place to ask huge questions about who we are, where we're headed, and what any of it even means. It's actually less about the future and way more about us, right here, right now. So to really get how it does this, we have to look at its DNA first. I mean, science fiction didn't just pop up out of thin air. It was forged in the fire of scientific revolution and massive social change. Its history is really our history. The whole history of the genre is just the story of constant evolution. It all kicks off with one groundbreaking novel that asks the question nobody had really asked before. From there, it kind of splits into two streams, one all about adventure and tech, the other about social commentary. Then it just explodes in popularity with those cheap pulp magazines, before it finally grows up and gets more sophisticated during its so-called golden age. And this is the absolutely brilliant, foundational idea Mary Shelley gives us. Her monster wasn't born from some magic spell. It came out of a lab. And the crucial point she was making is that with great scientific power comes huge responsibility, a theme that has been echoing through science fiction ever since.
So in the late 19th century, the genre basically forked. On one side, you've got Jules Verne, who's like the ultimate engineer, carefully figuring out the physics of a trip to the moon. And on the other side, you have H.G. Wells, the social critic, who's using wild ideas like time travel to talk about the class system of his own era. And that tension between what's possible and what does this mean for us is still at the very heart of the genre today. Okay, so let's get to this second key part of science fiction's anatomy, its role as this giant what-if engine. Great sci-fi takes just one single premise, one rule of our reality, and just flips it, and then it explores every single consequence that flows from that change.
Take alternate history, for example. It asks these huge questions like, what if the Axis powers had won World War II? Philip K. Dick's masterpiece, The Man in the High Castle, gives us this chillingly believable answer, and it doesn't just explore a different world, but it explores how our whole sense of reality gets shaped by history. And this really shows you the true power of that what-if question. By changing the past, these stories don't just entertain us, they force us to take a hard look at our own world. They make us ask, why did things turn out the way they did? And is our own reality really as solid as we think it is? Of course, not all of these what-ifs are about the past. Dystopian fiction looks to the future and asks, what if our worst tendencies win? After the incredible trauma of World War I, this dark vision of the future became super powerful, and it gave us absolute classics like George Orwell's 1984. And you can draw a straight line from classics like Orwell's to the huge boom in young adult dystopian fiction we've seen recently. Now, the settings are just as grim, but these modern stories often zero in on a young hero fighting back. They really tap into this powerful and I think hopeful desire to believe that one person can actually make a difference against a totally overwhelming system. Okay, so finally, let's talk about the icons, those powerful, recurring images that carry all this history and all these big ideas. They're not just cool visuals, they are absolutely packed with meaning. The spaceship is a perfect example. As the critic Roland Barthes pointed out, a ship in deep space isn't just a bus, it's a closed system. It's a tiny, self-contained world. It's basically an entire society in a bottle. And that idea leads you right to the concept of the generation starship. These massive vessels on journeys that are so long that generations are born, live their whole lives, and die on board. I mean, it is the ultimate laboratory for exploring how societies change or maybe even fall apart when they're completely cut off from everything they've ever known. And then there's the robot. A robot is so much more than just a machine that does chores for you. It's a mirror. It forces us to think about the line between what's alive and what's artificial, between the creator and the created, and ultimately, what it even means to be human in the first place. And get this, the word robot itself actually comes from a Czech word for forced labor. So it was born out of ideas about servitude, class, and rebellion. That whole tension was baked into the concept from the very beginning. So to get past the same old monster turns on its creator story, the writer Isaac Asimov came up with his famous 3 laws. They weren't just a safety manual, they were a brilliant engine for creating stories. They let him explore all the fascinating logical puzzles of artificial intelligence and ethics.
So you put it all together. You've got the history, you've got the big what-if ideas, and you've got these powerful, iconic symbols. When you combine them all, you start to see the true purpose of science fiction. It's exactly this. It is so much more than just escapist fun. Science fiction is this incredibly important space where we can think through our collective hopes, our deepest fears, and our biggest questions about where we are all headed, together. And if you remember one thing, it's this. Science fiction isn't really trying to predict tomorrow's iPhone. It uses the giant canvas of the future or an alternate past to paint a picture of today. It's a mirror, not a crystal ball.
And that's the key. That's the real takeaway. So the next time you're watching a sci-fi movie or reading a classic novel, don't just ask yourself, could this really happen? Ask a much better question. What is this vision of another world trying to tell me about the one I'm living in right now?